app deployed on Linux, right? This is my first thing. Then the next part is app is composed of, and this app is, let me see. No, sorry. Linux servers with .NET and Java. That will tell you certain thing. सबसे पहली चीज़ तो आपको ये पता लगेगी it's a .NET core framework, क्योंकि हमने we discussed this one कि .NET core framework जो है that is the only one that is available on Linux, right? That is one thing, and it tells you in the part A, right? One of the .NET core apps, which makes sense because this is the only thing that can happen on a Linux, right? Second thing is telling you a website is also used to serve department catalogs, and it's doing something and it's serving some content. Okay, so Java apps. So there are multiple apps. There are multiple apps. For example, let's go step by step. So .NET app, website, and it's serving content, and it's servicing content. Right? Servicing means you're downloading, uploading, whatever. Website servicing content, and also input info, right? Right. And behind the scenes, it has a MySQL database. This was the first thing. Then you have a Windows Server farm. Windows, right? This is .NET Framework 4.8. Again, ये सारी चीज़ें I went through many times ये वाले सारे points. कोई चीज़ें मैंने इसके अंदर भी लिखी हैं, nothing special. That tells you it can only go on a Windows Server farm, on a Windows server. This application cannot be deployed on a Linux servers. Right? यहाँ पे database is Postgre database. No need to go into the details of databases. Now, what it's telling you is issues, right? On this one, app server, they've given you already diagnosed the issue, and DB cannot handle load, right? It's telling you that unable to scale properly database and application servers. How they figure out is not an issue, right? What they have told you is these two guys cannot scale properly. Okay. Next part is, so these are two things. यहाँ पे उन्होंने कोई ऐसा so far issue नहीं लिखा हुआ. This one is now, point number 3 is load balancers farm with middleware components based on .NET Core, which are invoked by the application. So you have a third farm, server farm, और उसके अंदर they have not mentioned anything, but it's mentioned is .NET Core. That tells you you can pick Windows or Linux. Does not matter. It will run fine. Okay, but they have not mentioned. And some backend jobs, APIs, whatever. It's running some services that are invoked by the application. So your applications हैं from 1 and 2, services invoked by 1 and number 2. Okay. So this is the very simple analysis, right? It has not mentioned which are invoked by the applications, or which application is it, one or two. So you can assume whether it's coming from one or two. You don't know, so it should be available, applicable to maybe both of them. You can make some assumption, right? What is not mentioned, but it's mentioned some applications. So I mean, we are assuming both one and two are farms are accessing it. Okay. They've also mentioned that on point number 4 that आप ये Linux और Windows के ऊपर जो apps हैं they're also supported by SQL Server, right? यहाँ पे और यहाँ पे कुछ applications हैं, they are supported. Main thing is that SQL Server is there, used by apps in 1 and 2. Okay. That's all that you are concerned with, right? When you are doing this thing. Okay. पांचवी चीज उन्होंने लिखी है टेस्ट एनवायरनमेंट. Also, ये 1 और 2 फॉर एग्जांपल 1 and 2 जो सारी एप्लीकेशंस हैं और जो फॉर्म चल रहे हैं, all the environment student credentials, let's keep it simple as it's mentioned. The student credentials जो हैं and they are being used, for example, so apps are supported by, we can say apps are secured by ADDS. Okay. Now this is high level stuff, right? Now we start going into what is after 6. Queue various department catalogs. This is the guy who is doing department catalogs, right? So let's look at the issue over here. So now we can say that North America and EU Europe users face very slow download speeds. Okay. Okay. They're saying also requirements now, right? Security, put all DBs in separate VNet. Okay. This is what the security team has mentioned. So our requirements is this one, right? Now they're saying start doing this one, right? And which is they're saying that do all of these things, right? So let's take a look what is needed. We're going to draw the as is architecture, right? You can put anything, basically use anything. I'll use Visio. It's a diagramming tool, and you can use whatever. Let me see where it is. Just a moment. I don't know what ये नहीं नजर आ रहा मुझे. Just a moment. So let's take a look. How do we draw this one? Again, this is all from your case studies, nothing special that we'll do over here. Right, so when you start doing these things, sorry. यहाँ पे for example, my basic thing over here is, so I have Linux web servers, right? Right. Some number of them. You don't have to draw 6, you can draw 6, doesn't really matter. Some web servers, right? And you can keep your nodes in front of you, right? And it has basically served by, for example, MySQL and of course SQL Server, right? So I can put, for example, SQL Server and MySQL. And I can say कि ये वाला box है, for example, I can, for example, this guy is talking to this, and this guy is also talking to this. Right. This was the first thing, right? Then we have Windows Server Farm, and this guy is talking to SQL Server, right? So I can I'll make it generic. Right. And now I can say I have a Windows. G. Yes. ये भी लिखा नहीं हमने भी analyze the requirements and it says SQL Server used by apps in 1 and 2. Right? You have analyzed the requirement. I'm going step by step. Right? And this one says, because there are multiple apps, some application is, and this will happen very common in your practical life, that some guys will tell you something, half of the information, somebody will tell you other half of the information, right? You have to put it together. So मैंने कुछ information I have mentioned it over here, right? और मैं information is stored, for example, right? For this app, one of the app I've said various apps are there. I've not given you all the information. I've also broke down the application over here. The SQL Server is supporting some of the apps. If you analyze this, that tells you it's not giving you all the information. I've broken down something over here as well. और सारा एनालिसिस जो हमने कर लिया, we're going through analysis. We'll not go back over here. ये हमने एनालिसिस कर लिया, so we can work on this one. ये हमने सारी pertinent information निकाल लिया उसमें से, right? That we need. अब उसकी basis के ऊपर we'll move forward, right? So Windows Server Farm is, I'll go back, and it says Windows Server Farm is using the SQL Server as well, right? Used by apps in 1 and 2. So Windows Server Farm gets used, right? They're saying this another one, Server Farm, we don't know whether whatever it is, right? .NET Core is used by both farms, right? Sorry. Now I have another farm which was called middleware. That is doing all the background services, buyer से integration करनी है इसने, whatever it needs to do. Important point is it's something that is being used by all applications or some of the applications in both forms. Could be providing whatever sort of services, right? So backend services, backend REST APIs, maybe containerized application, whatever it is, right? Whatever they have mentioned. They have mentioned, for example, let's see. Yeah, load balance farms or .NET Core, right? So this is what it is. And right now they don't say, so we'll say it can be Linux or Windows, right? Because it's .NET Core. In my class, I've clarified it many times to you guys, right? So you have to pick the right information, what the information that is pertinent to you, right? So when somebody tells you something, you have to concentrate on आपके लिए इसमें क्या चीज़ वैल्यू की है and what decision you have to make based on what was told to you, right? That is the important part of this analysis, right? And this happens a lot in our real world application. They say things that you need to map to in your domain. They can say all sort of things, right? But you need to understand what it needs to be mapped to, right? So anyway, anything else that we need to say? And they're saying there's a test environment of this whole thing. So test environment generally is a small thing. So if I say, for example, okay, test environment भी है हमारी, right? So I can say, right, could be a small, much smaller, right? Maybe a single server environment, single server का farm बना हुआ है, right? Middleware के लिए I have just a single app, single VM. So instead of having a load balancer and load balance environment with scalability and all that, I have a very small environment, right? कर लो. I mean, point is when you are being asked to create an as-is environment, so there could be some other things as well, and I will go into that one in a minute. You can say it's a single server. You can mention, for example, single VM. Generally, क्या होता है कि यहाँ पे, for example, I mentioned 6 VMs over here. To have some sense of similarity to production environment, you want to have at least 2 servers over here instead of a single server, ताकि you can make sure application is working fine and it scales. It can work in a load balancer environment. lot of time application ki problems you find out in a load balancer environment, right? You want to have, for example, these kind of things, right? Of course, this becomes easy or much less problematic if you are doing containers, right? Because containers are by definition they are stateless. So uske andar there's less issue of, for example, so as long as application is stateless, anyway, I don't want to go into the details. So generally you want to have two at least servers. So you can say two server Linux farm, two server Windows farm, or whatever you want to put. You can mention those kind of details. If you just want to put, for example, that's fine. Whatever, however you want to depict, right? Depiction is up to you guys. Whatever makes sense between you and the consumer of this, right? So again, from as is, so we can say this is a prod. We can say this is a test. You can say over here, for example, SQL Server, single node. You can mention like these, right? Just to differentiate or show your understanding, right? HA highly available, right? So each point you can put certain pointers to demonstrate your understanding for the customer when you're working in with the customers, right? Production environment, you're working with actual real life scenarios. You want to put certain pointers, right? Even if you're putting a small box, you can put the pointers and the specific wording that tells these kind of things, right? Then what it's saying is you need to migrate, right? You need to utilize Azure PaaS native services when possible and use them if possible, right? Now let's focus on the migration part, right? So it is saying you need to use PaaS services. So let's take a look, right? What are the building blocks, right? So now having this in front of you is very critical, right? I will copy paste this. So Linux farm, what does that mean in an Azure app service, right? Because we had covered Azure app service up to this point. What does that mean, right? That means nothing more than an app service plan. A farm is nothing more than an app service plan. And this is precisely what they mentioned, what we studied in the class as well. जब मैंने आपको design case studies बताई थी. So now you have an app service plan over here, which is based on Linux VMs. और ये, if you remember from the class, we discussed this part, right? कि when you're doing applications, and application means code based, not containers, right? You need to pick the runtime and the operating system. With containers के लिए you're concerned with the operating system only. So having said that, over here we're concerned with, okay, so it has .NET and Java. Okay, so Linux farm will be perfectly fine. Okay, so we'll do, for example, when we come to Azure, we'll have Linux ASP with .NET Core and Java. Okay, this is one. What else we need to have? We must have a Windows ASP app service plan, right? क्योंकि हमारे पास वो भी है .NET 4.8. So you must have a separate Windows ASP with .NET framework. मैंने क्लास में दिखाया भी था that if you can pick the runtime 4.8 specifically, right? Or this must be on Windows. So you are bound by these two things. What else is there? अब यहाँ पे interesting choice है because this one is just middleware components, right? That means, these are web applications with .NET Core and running on Linux. So you can say That means you have an ASP already that covers the middleware components. But part of ASP is that all applications are running on it, right? That means middleware ka, that means if you do this one, so you have apps, right? अब वहाँ पे जो फार्म, अब यहाँ पे आप कह रहे हो फॉर एग्जांपल, right? अब these apps are running on this app service plan. These are running on this app service plan, right? Now you have middleware components as well. और मैंने आपको बताया था ये वाली चीज़, और ये सारी it's a rehash of what we have learned, right? So if you think through what you have learned, and this is the critical part, जो कुछ आपने पढ़ा है अभी तक, जो concepts पढ़े हैं, you are putting those in the practice. I know that I can put the middleware components also, right? And host them on the same ASP, right? And this is where you have to think through a little bit, and you can do multiple things, but idea is to understand what you're doing and provide reasoning, right? क्या रीजनिंग है इसके अंदर, एंड दिस इज व्हाट आई वांट यू गाइस टू सी. सारा जो पर्पस था इसका इज फॉर यू गाइस टू सी थिंग्स एंड एक्सपीरियंस थिंग्स, राइट? ये सारी वो जो है एक्सरसाइज का जो पर्पस था, फॉर यू गाइस टू डेवलप सर्टन थिंग्स, राइट? अब यहाँ पे इफ यू टेक अ लुक, if when these guys, we know they are using this, we have already mentioned 1 and 2 are using, right? That means there is no latency. This will call application on the same server, on the same ASP, right? Middleware components are sitting over here. That means there will be no latency, which they have not mentioned any issue, but it will be very optimized. You are calling other components sitting on the same machine, right? Which will be very, very nice. जी. यार अभी तो मैंने पढ़ाया नहीं थे आपको एक तो, right? And then you have another level of complexity, or not complexity, but things to think through, right? So right now it's a very simple solution, but yes, you can think through containers. But since we have not covered containers, मैंने इसको assign करने के बाद आपको पढ़ाए थे, that's why I'm not looking into containers right now. But yes, you can do containers also. उसके अपने challenges हैं, and you have to understand those things. This will be a good exercise to convert into Azure app service containers, right? Container apps actually, because it has certain things, and will be very nice exercise to convert it onto Azure container apps, right? Or even to Kubernetes. Of course, it's a managed Kubernetes service, so end result is almost same, but there again there are critical differences, right? But yes, you can do that one, right? Yeah. अब यहाँ पे, but again, don't worry about technologies. The focus is on the thought process, right? You can take thought process on any technology. The idea है that is for you to learn how to apply things given the situation. Somebody will say, I want to use XYZ. Just to show you, for example, let me just show you something. ये हमारी डिप्लॉयमेंट हो रही है फॉर अ वेरी बिग कस्टमर राइट नाउ, राइट? This is on Kubernetes, SQL Server. SQL Server is timing out, containers are timing out, we're doing load testing, on and on and on, right? So, lot of stuff is happening. There are teams involved in this one. But what I'm trying to say is, you need to be able to understand your design decisions. उसके बाद you can apply anything, right? I, and you need to provide reasoning. तो आई एम कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड ऑन द रीजनिंग पार्ट, और आपको क्या फीचर्स कहाँ से देखने हैं फॉर यू टू कम अप विद द सोल्यूशन, राइट? दिस इज द मोस्ट क्रिटिकल पार्ट, राइट, इन दिस वन. एनीवे, अब यहाँ पे फॉर योर एज इज आर्किटेक्चर, राइट नाउ, if I go with this approach, right, if I go with this approach, that means this guy will be talking to sending request over here as well, right? Your entry point is this. Hold on. Your entry point for this one is right this. मैंने लिंक तो नहीं किया उसको, मैं तो कहा आपकी सर्विस कॉल विल गो ओवर देयर. So it's, I can say, so there is no linking, right? But app service, and I'm putting an error from one app service plan to the other app service plan, the requests are going, right? Application deployed, there is no linking. यहाँ पे, so you will read the arrows differently, right? यहाँ पे मैंने web app deploy की हुई यहाँ पे, but an app service plan is talking to app service. That means requests are going between from here to here, right? From this direction into that direction. I can say service invocation on Linux ASP, right? So there is no linking, it's just I'm invoking the services which are deployed over here, right? I'm just showing you the flow of information, right? Or it cannot be, it cannot be two-way. Can it be two-way? आप बताओ. आप मुझे बताओ why it cannot be two-way, or why it can be or cannot be two-way. हमने भी जो एनालाइज की है अपनी रिक्वायरमेंट्स, बेस्ड ऑन दैट व्हाई इट कैनॉट बी द रिवर्स वे. इट्स अ गुड क्वेश्चन. It cannot be, right? No, because we said the middleware components are used by web apps, right? Up it just happens to be I have deployed the middleware components on the same ASP, right? I mean, look at this way. If it's not making sense, right? I'll make it simple. Is this clear? Is this what our architecture was? ठीक है, ये था ना हमारा ये वाला. This was it was. उसको मैंने यहाँ पे इसमें यहाँ पे ये कर दिया। मैं तो सिर्फ ये कह रहा हूँ। हाँ जी। Yeah, they're invoked by both of these guys, right? Yeah, all it doesn't matter. It does not matter what it is, right? मैंने जो कुछ भी बनाया है, ये important part is it's a server farm, right? I'm not going into those details right now. Whether I have मैंने उसको बताया अब यहाँ पे फॉर एग्जांपल यहाँ पे वेब एप्लीकेशंस है राइट और लेट्स से दे हैव सेट सर्विसेज इट्स इमटेरियल राइट नाउ राइट कि उसकी क्या वो है इट विल नॉट मैटर कि क्या कहते हैं क्यों यहाँ पे आपकी डिप्लॉयमेंट हो रही है कोड लेट मी सी राइट नो नीड टू गो इनटू अननेसेसरीली डिटेल्स एट द मोमेंट राइट और वहाँ पे थिंक अबाउट इट उन्होंने वहाँ पे लेट्स से इफ यू गो बैक इनटू दिस वन राइट load balancing farm है right which are invoked by applications. So could be REST APIs, right? So you can have a function app or whatever, right? And again deployed on something. अब यहाँ पे आप कह सकते हो I want them as serverless, right? Function app. If you do that, then it changes certain things. But nice thing in this, and you can have both approaches, right? You can say, for example, currently, as you can see, it's a server farm. So if I take it as is, I'm deploying in the ASP. Now look at this one. If it's deployed, अब मैंने क्या किया था? मैंने ये किया था जो आपको मैं समझाना चाह रहा था. Strong to middleware components, it has its own ASP or it can reuse the same app service plan. ये मैंने पिक्चर बनाई थी पहले, right? This is what I was trying to say. कौन सा वाला किसका वाला एग्जैक्टली exactly, वो मैंने एक ऑप्टिमाइज बनाया था क्योंकि आपकी रिक्वायरमेंट इज दिस राइट मिनिमाइज एंड रीयूज कंप्यूट व्हेन एवर पॉसिबल राइट तो दिस वाज हाईली ऑप्टिमाइज्ड वो मैं दिखा रहा था बिकॉज इट वाज नॉट गेटिंग क्लियर मैंने आपको अलग करके दिखाया उसको तो मैं कर क्या रहा था वहां पे नाउ थिंक अबाउट इट राइट जो मैंने किया था पहले I'll keep it this way right let me just keep it this way V1 let's call it V1 okay solution V1 मैं इसको थोड़ा सा कॉम्पैक्ट करूं ताकि इस right now I will say control C and I will do one more page okay now in the V2 for example I can say solution V2 I can see that sorry Java लिखा हुआ क्या लिखा हुआ है I'm sure it means anyway अब now you can see कि ये चीज जो है this is common so what I can do is I can remove this and I'll host it this one on this okay so now you're reusing the app service plan very efficiently अपने components वही यहाँ पे भी deploy करनी है right so your thought process will be very different right इसकी auto scaling है already right right so this we address this one right we address these 2 points we use compute whenever possible right जो भी native PaaS services हमारी app service plan था we reused it right Now, having said that, now we come to the next part, right? For testing of new applications. Again, you have to think through certain things over here. This sari whole exercise was to think through the points and right, which unfortunately, anyway, I don't want to go into those things. I've repeated it too many times. Now, if I say, for example, I can say production slots and I can say test slots, right? Let me just remove this one. Now I want to show this in a clear way. अब testing के लिए what I can do? If I do this, this was one very simple solution, right? Right. So this gives me, this take care of this one as well, right? We have discussed the slots, we have discussed how you can copy the configuration, we have discussed how can you do preview, where it copies all the settings to make sure it's running exactly in production without switching the URL, right? So that gives you a very nice way of testing the whole solution. And you have to do the same thing over here. Right. अब यहाँ पे एक जो ऐप सर्विस प्लान है that is giving you the number of slots, 4 इस्तेमाल कर रहे हो, it could be you have other slots as well, so you need to pick the right one, right? You know you have I think 3, 10, 20 and then whatever, 100, whatever, right? But anyway, that is not the issue right now, not an area of concern, right? Over here. So this is a native solution for testing, easy rollout, all of those things, right? You added the slots. Now we come to the issue of slow catalog. For slow catalog, we have said in our requirements that for NA and E users, there's facing slow. That means it is deployed maybe in Pakistan, right? And you have to make certain assumptions over here, right? We'll say assumption because if those are the two people, regions who are accessing it, that means it's pretty far and the size of the content is pretty big, right? That's why download speeds are slow because our data center, right, is very far from them, or latency is quite a bit. So we'll say assumption apps is hosted in, for example, in Pakistan, right? Let's say Azure Pakistan DC, or we can say in local DC, local Pakistan data center, right? We have to put some assumption to provide a solution, right? We cannot go over right away. So since we're doing an Azure based solution, right, a very very simple way, और ये सारी चीज़ें are, you need to think through it instead of just putting the solution. Think through it, right? Lot of time just by the nature of the solution and what you're doing solves many problems. So you don't need to over engineer. I can say we'll host the application, right? So for example in this one, if I say solution point number 6, we can say we'll deploy the app, or we can say deploy solution in Azure Europe DC, right? This will take care of any, for example, issues in bandwidth and latency from NA, EU, or subcontinent. Okay, it's in the middle. Will take care automatically, but you have to think through it what you're doing, right? That is one thing you can mention. Another thing you can say, if you want to put a solution and you want to say, I want to deploy this in Pakistan. Let's say Azure has a data center in Pakistan, right? But let's say there is what we want to do is we want to be able to put this close to users wherever they are. Then what we want to do is, for example, sorry, we have not mentioned something over here, which is the databases, right? If you go back over here, it has MySQL and SQL Server. So over here, we'll keep it as is, right? And so SQL Server is being used by both of them, and MySQL is used by, and there's a Postgre also. Sorry, we missed the Postgre part, right? Sorry, where is code? Windows Server Farm is using Postgre. So Control Z. So they are using this one as well, right? So now we go back to our solution and we have a common SQL. And what I will do is over here is sorry, there are mixed. Sorry, I'll make it separate so things are clear. We can, and same thing is over here also that we can do connector tool over here, right? And then we can say तो ये now these are everything that we have, right? और यहाँ पे actually in the solution to the नहीं, मैंने नहीं किया। मैंने अभी कहा है कि मैंने जो solution I'm deploying in यूरोप DC के अंदर, ठीक है? हाँ। I'm coming to that. मैं अभी दूसरे solution की तरफ आ रहा हूँ। Again, I'm trying to keep the solution to what we have covered in the class, क्योंकि इसमें कई चीज़ें that we have covered in the we have not covered in the class, ठीक है? So I'm trying to stay within those solution components, क्योंकि the point is lot of this stuff or lot of the ideas will maybe come on final as well, right? Don't think from that, and think about what you have learned and use it judiciously and properly, right? Already solution ke andar there are so many things where you need to investigate and do these things, right? Regarding CDN part, Azure ke andar CDN is, what is CDN in Azure? I understand what CDN is. My question was very different. I said, what is the CDN in Azure? जी नहीं, मैं पूछ रहा हूँ एज्योर के अंदर जो सीडीएन सर्विस है व्हाट इट इज कॉल्ड। आप यहाँ पे, मैंने यहाँ पे वेब ऐप लिख रहा हूँ, मैं यहाँ पे एएसपी लिख रहा हूँ, अब क्या लिखोगे, क्या चीज़ है? देयर इज नो सच थिंग एज सीडीएन इन एज्योर। यू हैव टू पिक एन एज्योर सर्विस। व्हाट इज दैट एज्योर सर्विस? आप एज्योर के ऊपर सोल्यूशन बना रहे हो, राइट? द सीडीएन इन एज्योर इज कॉल्ड फ्रंट डोर, एंड देन यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड फ्रंट डोर, राइट? फ्रंट डोर के many other functionalities are there, right? That's what I don't want to bring, which we have not covered, right? I don't want to put generic technologies from out there, right? I'm trying to avoid that to make keep things simple to what we have covered for the whole class, right? So if you go into Azure, you need to use Azure Front Door, and you have to configure it appropriately, or you have to put Front Door. When you come into, no, it is not. Actually, Front Door provides the CDN services to Azure. CDN is provided by Azure Front Door. Azure Front Door is beside the application gateway and load balancer. It has the CDN services as well. I don't want to go into these discussions in this one, but anyway, let me just open it to explain. I'm going to digress for 1 minute. Right? So it is load balancer, it is CDN, it has many different functionality. That is why Microsoft ने थर्ड पार्टी CDN सर्विसेज खत्म करके इसके अंदर वो किया हुआ है। अब इसके अंदर it is deployed through Azure Front Door, for example. Azure Front Door provides, for example, all the CDN services. इसमें जो क्लासिक चीज़ें थी, for example, there is all given, right? ये सारी चीज़ें ख़त्म हो चुकी हैं बेसिक इसके अंदर से, राइट? ये सारी की सारी इज गॉन, राइट? एवरीथिंग इज कमिंग इनटू फ्रंट डोर। हमारी जो CDN सर्विस थी क्लासिकल, इट बेस्ड ऑन Verizon एंड अदर कंपनीज, इट्स गॉन, प्रिटी मच गॉन, राइट? सो राइट नाउ इट्स बेस्ड ऑन फ्रंट डोर। वी डोंट यूज एनीथिंग एल्स, हमारा सारा फ्रंट डोर के ऊपर है। नॉट टू मेंशन, फॉर एग्जांपल, जस्ट टू शो यू, this is a big migration going on हमारे कस्टमर के साथ actually for the front door CDN. I don't know if it's this one or this one. Yeah, this one. No, this is also not it. Anyway, ये बहुत बड़ी माइग्रेशन की हमने for the last few months. We've been doing moving to front door CDN because it's deployed. Again, you can see everything is over here. All the CDN rules, everything is there. This is what they're using basically now. So that's why they're comparing all these basically with this one. And you can see now front door is the one, for example, right? The classic Sare, everything is gone, right? And being migrated, right? So Microsoft's this one has only one service right now, and everything is consolidated into front door, right? And front door is what provides basically your CDN, and as you can see, all services are over it now. And you can read through it a little bit more. Let me just see. Right. इस सारी आप पढ़ोगे, you will see all the CDN इसके अंदर basically caching and all those things basically, right? So everything is over here. The legacy CDN है which has all those things that you're mentioning right now, but it's all, everything is being finished right now. So I don't want to put generic services as a front door. I did not cover. Again, these are advanced scenarios for web apps. इसका module है web apps के अंदर basically for front door CDN. But front door के अंदर there are many other things that we start off with before we get into CDN and CDN based solutions, right? On these kind of things. But regardless, CDN is always a good option, and you can mention since it is there, for example. But since I have not covered, I have 50 students to look into, not somebody, I mean, not individuals, right? So I want to give a common solution that makes sense to everyone. I'm coming to that one. I'm coming to all of those things. अब दूसरी जो मैंने चीज़ कही थी कि जो मैंने क्लास में बताई थी टू यूज़ RAGRS, कि यहाँ पे for example is this one, right? Let me see. ये arrow मैंने इसमें किया था. Anyway, this arrow is in the solution one is not there. I'll stick to this one, and over in the solution two is that one. Now, for example, everything is sitting into behind these things is if I say, for example, Azure storage. क्योंकि लास्ट क्लास में वी कवर्ड सम डिफरेंट स्टफ और उसके अंदर मैंने वो किया था, तो मैं सोल्यूशन के अंदर भी वो यू विल सी ट्रैफिक मैनेजर, एंड आई विल गो इनटू दैट वन. I don't think we covered traffic manager in this one. Now, let's say, and this is a general thing, and we did this in a very similar stuff in Saudi Airlines. Customer says we want to be able for the users to reach to the closest possible endpoint. Closest possible endpoint. They should not go. And this says another thing also. Basically, anyway, वो चीज़ apply नहीं होती. That was for example, rules for keeping data in a single location. It doesn't it's not applicable. But anyway, यहाँ पे storage है मेरा, right? Now, can I bring this storage closer to the user, right? And in that situation is, let me just go back into the different now I'll simplify this whole thing, right, to go into some another area, right, that you can look into, which is I'll remove the, so we have middleware components. I'll remove, for example, I'll go into, for example, yes, good point, good point. So what I can do is, for example, सारे databases need to be in their own VNet. Okay, that was a good point. So let's take a look at that one as well. And I guess I can do it over, instead of putting all of them together. I think from picture perspective, it would be nicer to put all of them together, right? I can simply say, for example, let me put them together, okay? I think it'll get messy. I think what I will do over here is, so यहाँ पे I can say, for example, I will simply mention vnet1 snet MySQL. Okay, I can do something like that. कि ये अपने सबनेट के अंदर है in one vnet, is in its own subnet. This one is vnet1 snet postgre, and this is precisely what we do actually in real life environments as well, right? vnet1 snet SQL. You can mention something like this, right? Just for ease of drawing. Anyway, okay. You can mention something like this to show, okay, they are all sitting in the same VNet. Or you can put them in a box, whatever makes sense. Now, अब मैंने इसको ये करना है कि मैं इसको actually छोटा कर था ताकि I can squeeze this one a little bit. Right. Right, so this is what we have. Now what I can do is basically, my intent is that I want to, can I deploy this closer to the user? This is the whole intent of this exercise, right? Can I do this one? So what I will do is, now I can say this is in, I'll add that into its own container, and I will say container, add new container, and I can say this is EU, okay? And I can say, I'll duplicate this one, okay? अब उसके लिए मुझे सिर्फ एक एप्लीकेशन चाहिए यहाँ पे, and which is not using SQL Server, which is not using MySQL. There is just the content delivery, right? So for that one, for example, in the NA North America, what I can do is I can get rid of this. I can get rid of this. This is deployed in the same place, in the same ASP. Okay, I'll reverse this one just to show that it is, let me see. जी नहीं, I mean it is mentioned कि उसके डिपार्टमेंट कैटलॉग्स हैं, कंटेंट है उसका, right? I'm storing content somewhere, database में तो नहीं होगा, सारी PDF files, audio, video, whatever it is. You must have the storage. और मैंने आपको क्लास के अंदर एक और चीज़ भी बताई थी कि give me just 1 second guys. Okay, so let's continue. मैंने आपको बताया था आपकी वेबसाइट के लिए beside the code everything must be stored in the storage, right? ये मैंने आपको बताया था जो problems होती हैं यहाँ पे this thing, right? तो this is the critical part कि आपका storage हो and you must have actually. So now what you can do is आपके middleware components is what you need, right? Right. And this one you can make it RAGRS. And lot of time, for example, especially of critical websites, this is what you do. So even if website goes down from over here, it is still up and running over here, right? अब उसके अंदर जो आपने डिसीजन इसमें से भी निकाल लें, that is कि this website, the content website has yes, it might need middleware, it might need MySQL, right? So you can keep those things at least minimal, right? तो हमने सिर्फ इसको टाइप किया था, we'll keep it like this, right? And now we can say, for example, right? Yeah, again, go back to your requirements, right? Requirements are telling you that the issue is with this application which is servicing content, right? जहाँ पे content delivery हो रही है, always focus on the requirements, right? Slow catalog downloads are over here only. This is what we want to solve, right? Always keep your requirements in front of you. I don't want to build this whole thing. I want to put the minimal thing that sorts my problem. मैं पूरा infrastructure नहीं deploy करना चाह रहा, right? Now I can send the user, and I don't want to go into that thing. How would you do that? But it can, for example, how to switch from it. But NA users will come to NA. Again, I am solving problem for the downloads only. So I will only replicate that part of infrastructure that is needed to sort out that problem. Baki, nobody has any issues, right? So I'm perfectly fine. And I will deploy only the application. And this is, for example, main. I will make it very specific that this is only the main website, right? So this main website is using MySQL. So I'm putting only the stuff that is needed, right? Nothing else. कोई और application deploy नहीं कर रहा यहाँ पे. And I can do that using my CI/CD pipelines, my DevOps. So always read these things very वो क्या कहते हैं carefully and which affects your decisions a lot, right? अब यहाँ पे for example, यहाँ पे that gives me high availability. If this main website goes down, it is available over here. So this is based on what we have covered. You can add CDN, which lot of people put in the solution without understanding. But again, I'm not looking for what people have put simply because I know how it was generated. But again, if you understand, put it there. But my focus is, are you addressing what is there, right? And those kind of things, right? And putting all the solution components properly. Then after that, do whatever. There's containers also you can do. Containers के साथ you can also further simplify this solution, right? Before you go into containers, You can do certain things over here as well into MySQL and PostgreSQL, right? You can do those kind of things as well, which is to use the PaaS services, right? So anyway, there's room for a lot of improvement. I'm sticking to what we covered in the covered in the class, right? Now, if you go with the CDN based solution, then you have to use introduce CDN into the picture and configure those things. And yes, it'll be. लेकिन दोनों चीज़ों के दो different फायदे हैं. एक तो this is within what we have covered. Second, importantly, this is giving us high availability across multiple regions. That if one website goes down for whatever reason, if region goes down, it is giving us that, right? But if you stay within the constraints, yes. With the constraints, you can only do this, or you can do this, or you can do CDN, right? Because they have not asked for high availability of the solution, right? So yes, you don't have to do that. Definitely a much simpler solution. Absolutely. Okay. So they're very nice things. CDN is a very good solution. They are also good solutions on the MySQL, Postgre, SQL Server, right? So there are a lot of improvements. Again, I don't want to get stuck on a specific solution component, what is good or bad. It's a thought process which you will need a lot in your final exam. Okay? I want to just concentrate, and this is a very critical thing, right? Concentrate on your final. You will need all sort of thought process that for these kind of things. Okay? और मैंने right from the start of the class to this point, I'm hammering one point. Uh, Develop your skill set. Doesn't matter, it's not the fully optimized solution. It's the thought process and how you're using it and how you're coming about and how you are, for example, justifying your solution. That is the critical part that you have to learn. Okay? हाँ, हम्म, क्या है? हम्म, हम्म, हम्म. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter wherever it is. You can put it over here. You can put it over here, right? किसको किसके साथ होना चाहिए इसको? नहीं, देखो वेब ऐप इज डिप्लॉयड ओवर हियर. आपका कोड कहाँ पे रन कर रहा है फॉर द वेब ऐप? नहीं यार, लेट्स गाइस, यू नीड टू कंसंट्रेट व्हाट वी आर डूइंग. हमने कहा था कि दिस वेब ऐप इज स्टोरिंग कंटेंट, इट इज डिप्लॉयड ऑन दिस वन. तो हमने जो मेन वेब ऐप थी, वेबसाइट थी यूनिवर्सिटी की, दैट इज यूजिंग ऑल द कंटेंट, राइट? यस, उसका भी स्टोरेज होगा. आई एम नॉट सेइंग इट इज नॉट देयर, बट उसकी प्रॉब्लम्स और ये चीजें इट्स नॉट मेंशन्ड. So we don't have to go into every possible thing that every application is doing. To stick to what we have, right? It is not end-to-end 100% solution. There could be other things. Stick to the requirements, right? What they've given and try to solve. Understand these things. It's a small activity to demonstrate your understanding about certain things, right? I'm not here to tell you each and everything right now. It's to develop small steps we are taking to develop, right? And to do these things. It is not to give you an end-to-end everything possible. There are many things that could be changed and modified, right, in this one and updated. But the point is, it's a slow progression of how do you develop your skill set with the limited knowledge that you have learned so far. And given Mhm. So yeah. So first of all, you have to put what is governance, right? इसमें आपकी सबसे पहली चीज़ है गवर्नेंस के ऊपर. फॉर एग्जांपल, यू कैन हैव टैग्स, यू कैन हैव पॉलिसीज, एंड यू कैन हैव दोज काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स, राइट? अब पॉलिसीज के लिए गिव मी जस्ट वन सेकंड, मेरी मीटिंग स्टार्ट हो गई भी अगली. तो तो नाउ फॉर एग्जांपल, यहाँ पे आप कह सकते हो यहाँ पे वर्चुअल मशीन्स इस्तेमाल हो रही हैं, राइट? फॉर एग्जांपल, फॉर द डेटाबेसेस यू कैन से a database machine of this kind cannot have more than this queue. You can have policies that VMs cannot have public IP address. You can have storage. You can have only public IP, public access is disabled. So you can have 2 3 policies like this, right? You can enable monitoring. अगर यूज हो रहा है, you should get alerts. For example, on ASP, on Windows ASP, on Linux ASP, if usage is high, if it crosses certain threshold, you can use this, right? So there are many different things. So first you have to quantify what governance you have to add. You can have monitoring alerts, you can have logging, and you can have tagging. At least 2 3 things you can put from your governance, what you've learned from governance, right? But region is not active at the same time. Region pair is for disaster recovery. It will not be active. Similar to zone. Zone can that you can replicate also to the other DC, but you cannot use it unless failover happens. और region pair सिर्फ आपको वो करता है कि you can it will give you higher priority for failover than other regions. अगर 10 region है वहाँ पे replicate की हुई चीजें and failover happens, since you are in a region pair, you will get priority over other regions for the resources, right? So this is the high level. अब उसके अंदर यार इट वाज प्रीटी स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड, राइट? अब यहाँ पे फॉर एग्जांपल एडीडीएस था, और यहाँ पे आना है बेसिकली फॉर एग्जांपल यू कैन से एंट्रा आईडी, राइट? सो यहाँ पे क्या होना था, यहाँ पे लेट मी जस्ट ऐड दैट पार्ट एज वेल. एडीडीएस, राइट? और यहाँ पे यू व्हाट यू हैड टू इट वाज स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड, राइट? जो चीज़ आपने देखनी थी, इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ वाज, पॉइंट वाज, राइट, कि ADDS is coming into Entra ID, and Entra ID is then, for example, is over here, right? आउटसाइड आईडी B2B और B2C दिखाना था उसके अंदर, वो आपकी पिक्चर्स के अंदर है. आई रियली नीड टू रन, मेरी मीटिंग शुरू हुई तकरीबन 10 15 मिनट हो गए. मैं आई शुड हैव केप्ट इट लॉन्गर मे बी, बट पोस्ट द क्वेश्चंस ओवर देयर, राइट? पोस्ट क्वेश्चन एंड DNS load balancer, yes. Yeah, yes, you can do that. Wait, as long as you have a private endpoint, wherever it is, you can use Traffic Manager. It is nothing to do with Azure. You can point traffic to anywhere in the world, your own data center, Azure data center, it doesn't matter. It just needs a public endpoint. आई नीड टू रन, मेरी मीटिंग शुरू हो गई है जॉब पे। तो एनी क्वेश्चंस आई विल पोस्ट इस ये रिकॉर्डिंग भी और सारा कुछ। एंड गुड लक इंशाल्लाह टुमारो। वर्क जो सारे जो मैंने लिंक्स दिए मैं मेक श्योर टू गो ओवर एवरीथिंग, ओके। There's design questions, design points that you really need to make sure you are comfortable with container apps and web services, okay? App service हमने बहुत ज़्यादा कर लिया हुआ है. You're going to have very similar stuff on container apps as well. So please make sure you cover all these things, right? सिर्फ दो slide deck है. So make sure you go over all the links and everything. I need to run, okay? Question post करते हैं. I'll be answering inshallah until the final. I really need to run, okay? Thanks, guys.